Valiant Comics, Alien Books, and writer Mauro Mantella just issued groveling apologies and promised rewrites over one page of dialogue. What if I told you this exposed the comic book industry's biggest hypocrisy? Not gore, not violence, but a single conversation daring to voice an opinion that millions of parents have worldwide. Bloodshot Beyond #1 ignited a vicious meltdown, revealing an industry that champions free expression, but only when it fits their narrative. This isn't about one comic book, it's about the lie behind comics have always been political, and the backlash has nothing to do with Bloodshot. It's about enforcing the rule that only one kind of politics are allowed in this industry. In Bloodshot #1, there is one panel and sets of dialogue that discuss kids and identity. The metaphor isn't subtle. Bloodshot warns about adults pushing children into becoming vampires, stating, "There are kids who want to be bitten to become vampires because their favorite influencer says they're one, and parents who force their children into that irreversible change just to feel modern, and believing that they'll be thankful for it when they grow up." There's admittedly not much ambiguity here. Everyone who reads it knows instantly this is commentary on the current push from the left to transition children. And the cancel clowns, they came out immediately to claim scalps, with Dennis Camp and Ethan Sachs leading the way. Not surprisingly, everyone who loves to champion that comics have always been political are joining in. My issue isn't with the message. In fact, I agree with it 100%. Protecting children from making permanent life-altering decisions is a basic responsibility for parents, adults, and society as a whole. I do, however, take issue with the way that it was delivered, being so blunt and on the nose, and it pulls you right out of the story that it's trying to tell. A good political metaphor should blend seamlessly into the narrative, or it simply doesn't belong, and this did feel like preaching. The problem with being this overt is that it hands your critics ammunition. Instead of arguing with your story on merit, they can frame it as hate speech or bigotry, which derails the actual point being made and puts your career at risk if you're supporting conservative narratives. This is an issue I've talked about for years here on the channel. Nobody in the industry batted an eye when Gary Whitta used Batman to prop up Antifa and justify burning down Gotham City, but the second a conservative-leaning metaphor shows up, it's treated like a hate crime. When political allegory loses its nuance, it stops being storytelling and becomes a soapbox. And the moment readers feel lectured to, you've already lost them. Readers don't pay for propaganda, whether it's from the left or the right. Am I crazy here? Does this type of social commentary belong in comics, or should writers just leave it out entirely? Unfortunately, the fury didn't stay online. It didn't fade into the blue sky echo chamber. It went straight to the boardrooms, and the comics industry once again proves just how spineless they are. Within hours, the backpedaling began. Valiant Comics and Alien Books fell over themselves to issue a joint statement calling the dialogue harmful and promising rewrites, admitting the line read as alluding to real-world issues, apologizing for the harm caused, and blaming the controversy on the nuance lost in translation. To prove their contrition, they are promising to tighten editorial reviews to make sure this never ever happens again. Writer Mauro Mantella piled on with his own Instagram apology. He admits he screwed up, blames himself for using a phrase borrowed from the haters, and insists this is all just a misunderstanding. Mantella says he only meant to comment on vampires forcing kids into eternal life, but in his own words, maybe my subconscious betrayed me, and saying he felt sad and ashamed, begging for understanding and vowing to make amends. It's hard to read any of these apologies and believe they are made out of genuine reflection. These were made at the end of a sword. Everyone involved knows the mob is coming for their livelihoods, and instead of standing firm, they chose to give the crazies what they demanded out of pure fear. I don't buy for a second that this was a translation error. Mantella was making a point, and it took real guts in today's comic book industry, but instead of owning it, he folded. Too bad he didn't have the spine to stand by his convictions, because speaking that bluntly will cost him any chance of working in American comic books again, even with this apology. This is exactly how the left sees control not only of comics, but really all of entertainment. They weaponize outrage mobs full of people who never intended to read the book in the first place, unleashing the most vicious personal attacks imaginable. The goal isn't debate, it's obedience. And corporations, instead of defending their creators or ignoring the noise, fold every time out of fear. The mob has zero shame, and the industry has zero backbone. I talk to a lot of comic creators and editors behind the scenes at both Marvel and DC, and to a man and woman, they are terrified, not of writing a bad story, but of saying the wrong thing. They know one slip, one honest opinion can end their entire careers overnight. That's the environment this industry has built. Fear, silence, and total conformity. Comics cannot keep bending the knee to lunatics who don't even care about the books. Everyone should be able to express how they feel. And one perceived slip shouldn't mean a social media execution. The only reason these mobs hold power is because companies keep apologizing to them. Stop apologizing, stop even acknowledging them, and they lose all their leverage overnight. I don't know. Am I even reading the room right here? Should comic publishers ever come out and apologize for fictional dialogue? And here's the kicker. The creators demanding apologies, the same voices who spent years preaching that comics should always be political, they celebrate this exact same approach when it serves their agenda. Marvel Comics writer Ethan Sachs brags about using comics to incite change one panel at a time, calling politics essential storytelling, until Bloodshot Beyond #1 came along. DC and Marvel's Dennis Camp has built his entire career on pushing boundaries with political allegory. He's the darling of comics media for reinventing heroes around social commentary until it challenged his worldview. Zoe Tunnell writes endless essays about trans perspectives in comics, praising Immortal Hulk for leaning so far into politics. They champion activism in comics at every single turn until activism came from a side they didn't authorize. This is the not-so-secret mandate of the modern comic industry. Progressive ideas aren't just welcome, they're required. Every character must be a political mouthpiece, but only from one side of the aisle. If you're pushing the approved narrative, it's essential storytelling. If you're not, it's harmful or bigoted and erased. It doesn't matter if you generated millions of dollars for DC and built a fan base that keeps asses in seats. If your personal worldview isn't approved, you're out. Chuck Dixon is living proof. One of the greatest Batman writers in history, tossed aside just to make room for the new superstars whose only credential is parroting the right politics. And we've all seen it. Someone points out how politics being inserted to a story ruined a character or a title, and then the chorus arrives. Comics have always been political. They shout it loud enough, and all of a sudden, you're the villain. But where are those defenders right now? Are they standing up for Mauro Mantella's right to inject politics into his story? Of course they're not. How many times can Marvel reboot Captain America just to have him lecture readers that America was never great, or question whether he fought for the right side? Fans walk away every single time, sales crater, and still they repeat the cycle, because the one thing Marvel won't do is give us a real Captain America story, the kind that celebrates his ideals. Telling that story would get them canceled by their own employees before it even hit the shelves. Everything in comics is now disposable. The characters, the universes, the stories, all of it gets sacrificed on the altar of far-left political propaganda. The industry knows it's self-destructive. They know they're bleeding fans, but they refuse to change course. At this point, it would be sacrilege to do anything else. Ideology has become more sacred than the industry itself. And that's why this isn't about one panel or one writer or one issue. It's about the industry showing us who they are and daring us not to notice. This was never about Bloodshot Beyond #1. It's about maintaining control of an industry that's been lying for years. When they say comics have always been political, what they really mean is comics should only be political our way. When they brag about pushing boundaries, they mean their boundaries and shutting down everyone else's. The comic media and pro backlash to Bloodshot Beyond rips the mask off. It proves the people running this industry don't care about artistic freedom. What they really believe in is keeping their ideological chokehold. They don't want diverse voices, they want compliant ones. They don't fight against censorship, they demand it. And this is why readers are done. This is how US Comics positioned itself to be absolutely destroyed by manga, because fans are tired of being told that their beliefs are harmful or their voices don't matter and their money isn't welcome. This industry is controlled by one side of the aisle, and now we're all the ones paying the price. And if you think this was bad, just wait till you see how Marvel Comics and Jason Aaron bent the knee over his King Conan run. You won't believe what they actually had to apologize for. Check out my breakdown with Aaron Sparrow. The video's on the screen, but there's also a link in the video description. I do appreciate the time. And remember, keep thinking critical.